In AMS video 11 I used a single oscillator sound and added two LFOs. Each LFO had different settings. I used alternate modulation sources, in this case the foot pedal and the mod wheel, to bring these two LFOs in and out. The Kross produces sounds using two oscillators, and each of these has two LFOs available. The output of these four LFOs can be fed through a fifth LFO known as the common LFO. Common because it's shared by the other four LFOs. I talked in video 11 about how to bring these LFOs in and out with a foot pedal, the mod wheel or any other chosen AMS source, and now I'm going to talk about synchronizing them with a drum beat or the running of a step sequencer, so that we can bring the LFO effects in and out and have the oscillations of the LFOs keeping time with the drum beat. We have 5 LFOs available. If we want just one running in time with the beat and the rest working out of time, creating some weird effects, the Kross allows us to do this and have lots of different syncing options for each LFO, and we'll look at these shortly. As you can imagine, if you can get a filter to open and close in time with the beat of your music, or get a regular rise and fall in pitch or regular changes in volume of a sound, and you can get it to work in time with the beat, you can create some really great rhythmical sounds. So how do we do it? I'm going to start with an initialized patch again, so go to your user programs and select an init prog. I've already pressed the menu button, selected the POSC page and chosen sample 232, which is the detuned A2600. This is a sample from Korg's famous old A2600 synthesizer. If you press the menu button and in the PNFX page select for Master Effect 2 the plate reverb, setting number 106, and the return level, set that to 85, that'll give the sample sound some life. At this point, feel free to play the lead synth line from Gary Numan's Cars. Now press the drum track button, and we're going to set up a drum pattern that we can sync our LFOs to. The initialized drum program has a very basic drum program with no reverb on it. It's totally dry, so press the menu button and select the P drum track page. Using the Page Plus button, select the Program tab and select MFX Send 2 and set that at 56. Drum kit now has some of the reverb added from the master effects we just set. I'm now going to add an LFO, so press the menu button and scroll down to the P-amp page. And set the LFO 1 AMS to foot pedal in the mod tab. Set the amount to +99. Play a note. And when you press the foot pedal, you'll note that the LFO that's already set comes in or goes out. We're now going to adjust the frequency and the wave for that particular LFO, so press the menu button again, and this time go into the POSC LFO page and set for WAV1 the wave to square, and in the FRQ page next to it set the frequency to 58. You can hear when I press the pedal again that LFO starts to kick in. Next thing to do is to set the drum pattern running and press the foot pedal whilst playing a note. Now you'll notice that everything is running completely out of sync. That 58 setting doesn't tie in quite with the speed that the drum machine has been set to run at. Now I've adjusted the dial there, trying to change the frequency and just about hit the right pace for it. Now it's a bit hit and miss, so let's get this machine to actually do it for us. You'll see the frequency setting has a manual and a MIDI tempo sync option. So if you use the arrows, tab over to the MIDI tempo sync, use the dial and change the MIDI tempo sync. Here's the note, with the pedal depressed. It's perfectly in sync with the drum beat. Now that's me adjusting the tempo of the drum beat, and that is the tempo sync following the speed with the LFO. So we've got it completely synced up with the speed of the LFO. Now the way that the LFO is controlled is via two controls. One's called the bass and the other one's called times. These settings are presently set to a crotchet or quarter note, and the time setting is set to 1. Set the bass note to a quaver, that's an 8th note. And you'll notice that the LFO will play back 8 quarter notes in a bar of 4/4 time. If you know your music theory, you can get these two settings to sync to all sorts of weird drum patterns in weird time signatures. If you don't understand the theory, just mess with both settings until you find something that fits the speed of your track. Each of the 4 regular LFOs, which Korg rather cryptically called the per voice LFOs, can be set to manual or tempo synced. The tempo sync applied can be set the same or completely differently for any of the LFOs. The Kross can be linked to and controlled by another synth using MIDI controllers, as we said earlier. Now part of the MIDI standard is something called MIDI time clock. This is basically a timing signal. It could be supplied by another synth, by a drum machine, or by a hardware or software sequencer. Suppose that you have a favourite drum machine and you set it to play a drum pattern. If the Kross is set to act as a slave and linked by a MIDI cable, its LFO, step sequencer, regular sequencer and drum sounds can be set to run in sync and controlled by this external machine. The Kross also has an internal MIDI clock that sends messages to the drum track, to the sequencer, LFOs and so forth, so that they can all run in sync. To change this from internal sync to external sync, so the MIDI controllers from outside will control this thing, you need to adjust the global settings. This is a little bit beyond this video, but it's really neat if you ever want to use an external machine to control the Kross's timing, or use the Kross to control the timing of another machine. If you go back to the P amp page, you can set a second LFO to be controlled by an AMS source that can be different from that controlling the first LFO. If you tab up to the top left hand corner and use the dial, you can change the OS1 to the OS2 setting. You can add 2 more LFOs in the same way. Don't forget though that the init proc is only a 1 oscillator sound, so that all you will have is 2 LFOs available when you're using one of these. I'm now going to show you a program that I've created. This has 2 oscillators with the A2600 sample on oscillator 1 and the Ensemble Bell 104 sample on oscillator 2. I've transposed the bell up as far as it will go so that you can hear it clearly over the A2600. The 2600 has an LFO controlled by the foot pedal set to tempo sync, and the second one that I have manually synced. The bell sound has 2 LFOs running. These are turned on and off by switch 1 and switch 2 and set with different waveforms and frequencies so that you can hear them all clearly. As I bring each one of the 4 LFOs in and out, you should be able to hear what each one of them is doing. The 4 LFOs that I've got running can actually be fed into the 5th common LFO, which can be set either manually or have a similar sync setting using the bass and the times controls that you've got on the other LFOs. Now the AMS setting on the common LFO can be set to control the speed of the LFO manually, but there's no common LFO setting in the P amp page, so you can't bring the common LFO in or out with an AMS source like you can the other LFOs. Now it's not the end of the world, but it is a limitation you should be aware of. Anyway, I'm now going to play a little bit of music with the 4 LFO setups, and I'm going to introduce each one as I bring them in. So I'm going to start with a drum pattern. That's got absolutely nothing on it. That's the first LFO coming in, using the foot pedal. That's got the mod wheel, and you'll notice that despite my dodgy playing, the sync has actually kept up and brought everything back into line. So, foot pedal, mod wheel, switch 1, switch 2, switch 1 and 2. Not particularly musical, but you get the idea of how you can use these 4 LFOs and start bringing them in and out and using them together or interchangeably. Finally, in this part, as promised, here are LFOs working with a compressor to create that pumping sound in time with the beat, so beloved of modern dance producers. I've used the ideas in this video and created a preset where I've synchronized 2 LFOs to a drum beat, and I can bring them in and out using the P amp settings as I did before. I've also used a reverb in the master effects and a compressor with a setting that will really squash the sound levels. I've set the depth of the compressor effect to be controlled by the foot pedal, so that when the pedal goes down, the LFO cuts in and the compressor follows it. This isn't normally the way to get this effect, but if it works, why not use it? Again, the Yamaha YS200 and the Roland JV1080 are acting as MIDI slaves and following the notes played by the Kross. Enjoy.